So guys, we know that everyone will meet their death, including the sisters who devote themselves to the monastery, but their time the death of their particular nun caught my attention, because the case was only revealed 17 years later, and the trial was only completed 28 years after her death, and there was quite shocking to the public in India at that time. How is the full story? Today we will discuss in full the case of the death of the Abhaya nun born with the name given by her parents as Beena Thomas, who was born in the city of Kottayam, Kerala state, India, from parents named Matthew Thomas and Lilama. Beena was known since she was young as a good and religious girl. Since she was 5 years old, Beena was interested in studying things related to her religion. She also diligently reads scriptures and other theological books, and really likes to help people around her. As a teenager she joined the Congregation of St. Joseph, which was founded on July 3, 1928, to help people with disabilities and the underprivileged. A few years later, after she finished high school, Beena, who was still 18 years old, joined as a nun in the 10th St. Pius Monastery in her city, because Beena was determined to live religiously as a nun in a nunnery. One of her motivations was because a number of her close relatives had also become nuns in monasteries in Germany and Italy. With the vows she took, Beena took the name of Sister Abhaya, which means peace-loving and fearless. In the monastery, Sister Abhaya was highly respected by her fellow sisters and also her superiors, because of her calm attitude and strong will to work. Sister Abhaya also really liked to study, so that at that time she went to college and took 2 undergraduate programs at once, at the diocesan college affiliated with Mahatma Gandhi University. Her days were filled with various activities in the monastery besides praying and studying. However, no one expected that Sister Abhaya, who had a strong determination, would be found dead suddenly. Sister Abhaya had finished all her activities that day. In the evening before going to bed, Sister Abhaya had time to confide in her roommate, Sister Shirley, that she was a bit worried about her exams in college, which would be held next week. So she had to prepare herself to study harder than before. Sister Abhaya also asked Sister Shirley to wake her up the next morning around 4 a.m. Entering March 27, 1992 at around 4 a.m., according to her request, Sister Shirley woke Sister Abhaya. Finally she woke up that morning, and rushed to go to the study room. Because it was still too early, Sister Shirley went back to sleep, as did the other sisters in the next room who were still fast asleep. So Sister Abhaya walked slowly without making a sound so as not to wake the others. Because she was still sleepy, she took a bottle of cold water from the refrigerator to drink. Suddenly something terrible happened to Sister Abhaya. So she disappeared in the kitchen suddenly. 2 hours later, around 6 a.m., the nuns who entered the kitchen were heard to be noisy. Because they found the refrigerator still open, a bottle that fell on the floor with water splashing, a small axe that was usually kept in the kitchen, also lying next to the bottle, a pair of sandals on the floor, and also a veil that was stuck in the door belonging to one of the sisters. Hearing the commotion, Sister Shirley went to the kitchen to find out. After observing it, she realized that the sandals and veil belonged to Sister Abhaya. She was the last person to see Nun Abhaya that morning. Realizing that Nun Abhaya disappeared, leaving a strange trail in the kitchen, made all the residents of the monastery restless, so they surrounded the monastery to look for Nun Abhaya. A nun who accidentally looked into the well while passing by, immediately screamed in fear because she saw Nun Abhaya's body had been submerged in the deep well. The monastery immediately contacted the police and reported the incident. After the police arrived at the monastery, they also had difficulty lifting Nun Abhaya's body because the well was too deep. Finally they called the fire department to help evacuate the nun's body. After being successfully evacuated, it was discovered that Nun Abhaya, who was only 21 years old, was no longer alive. Her body was immediately taken to the hospital for an autopsy. From the results of the medical examination, bruises were found on the shoulder, 2 scratches behind the right ear, and also lacerations and cracks in the skull, which were suspected to be the main cause of her death. It is not yet known for sure why nun Abhaya was in the well, but no signs of violence were found. Investigations conducted by the Kerala State Police could not determine the cause of death or who was responsible for her death, because there were no signs of anyone else's presence. Although the crime scene was very suspicious, the case was finally closed with the statement that Sister Abhaya did it by jumping directly into the well. But the closing of the case drew protests from the Abhaya family and also the city's residents, especially since several sisters in the monastery believed that Sister Abhaya could not have done that. After the case was closed, human rights activists continued to urge that the investigation into Sister Abhaya's death be reopened. Finally, 2 weeks later the court officially ordered a reinvestigation, starting on April 13, 1992. But for more than 10 months the investigation was carried out. On January 30, 1993 the police submitted the evidence to the court. But strangely the police still claimed that Sister Abhaya died because she ended her own life. One of the sisters in charge of taking care of the monastery named Sister Shepi, also believed that Sister Abhaya died because she ended her own life. She even wrote her testimony notes on several pages, stating that the reason for Sister Abhaya doing that was because she was depressed with the exams she was facing. Not satisfied with the results of the police investigation, the family and other nuns again filed a petition to open an investigation. This time they asked the Central Bureau of Investigation or CBI, Kottayam branch to reinvestigate the case. The first report filed in 1996, stated that they agreed with the Kerala State Police, that the case was due to Sister Abhaya's own actions, but the court rejected it. So they asked them to reinvestigate the second report filed in 1999, stating that there were indications of murder in Sister Abhaya's death. But they could not reveal the perpetrator, so the court again rejected their report. The third report was filed again in 2005, and still stated that the case could not be traced, because they could not find who the killer was. So they filed a petition to close the case. But this report was also rejected by the court again. After 9 years of struggling and finding nothing, they finally handed over the case to be investigated by the Central Bureau of Investigation or CBI, New Delhi branch. The investigation began at that time. The investigation conducted by the New Delhi branch of the CBI, finally, revealed a bright spot that had been a mystery. They found someone who was an unexpected source. Namely Adaka Raju. An old man who lives in poverty with his wife and children. However, Raju decided to reveal all the secrets he knew. Adaka Raju is known as a big-time thief who is often in and out of prison, because of theft cases. He did it because he was forced by economic circumstances. Raju admitted that in the morning before sunrise, on March 27, 1992, the day the Abhaya nun was found dead. Actually, he was there and hid in the bushes to monitor the situation at that time. He intended to steal the screws and copper rods of the lightning rod installed in the monastery to sell. However, when he was monitoring, he saw 2 priests standing on the terrace of the monastery, carrying torches, and seen walking around there. Finally he gave up his intention to steal and remained in the bushes. And that's when in the darkness, he vaguely saw someone being dragged from the direction of the kitchen and thrown into the well. He left there. And after the death of the Abhaya nun spread throughout the city, he realized that what he saw that morning was a reality. For years the investigators of the Abhaya nun's death case were successfully hidden by high-ranking police officers. Because when Roger reported what he saw, since several years earlier the investigators forced him to change his statement, and tried to silence him. Roger was also detained for 58 days in the police station, and was subjected to inhumane torture, so that he would admit that he was the killer. But he persisted. And during the torture the police also made 40 false accusations so that Roger could be imprisoned. As a step so that Roger would not open his mouth, his brothers were also not spared from torture, so that they would accuse Roger of murder. And Raju's own father was told to buy a copper rod, as if it were evidence that he had committed theft in the monastery, and killed the Abhaya nun. He was even offered a large amount of money, a job for his wife and a promise of education costs for his children. Even though Raju lived in poverty and had to become a thief, he was determined to keep the case open. It was only when the investigation was handed over to the New Delhi branch of the CBI. He reported again and the case began to unravel. Finally in 2009, the police arrested Father Thomas M. Kaur and Father Jose Puthrakayal, who was allegedly involved in the murder. These two priests were the ones who Raju had seen at the time of the murder. The investigation was deepened and dragged a nun named Sister Shepi. However, during the in-depth investigation, the police released Father Jose Puthrakayal due to lack of evidence of involvement. Meanwhile, Father Thomas M. Kaur and Sister Shepi remained in custody. There is something interesting in this case. An assistant inspector who prepared the report and stated that Sister Abhaya died because of her own actions, was found dead after the suspects were arrested. It is believed that he was the one who tried to hide the facts of Sister Abhaya's murder, and also tortured Adhika Raju, as a key witness. After the suspects were arrested, the New Delhi CBI branch still had to struggle to collect witnesses and also collect evidence, all of which had been tried to be destroyed by the two suspects. The funny thing is that Sister Shepi was found to have undergone a hymen operation to repair her intimate organs, so that she looked like she was still a virgin. 10 years have passed. Finally on August 5, 2019 the first trial for the murder of Sister Abhaya was held. After 27 years the case was successfully covered up. Father Thomas Kaur and Sister Shepi were charged with murder and destroying evidence. They also tried to silence witnesses to pay a number of high-ranking police officers to avoid the case being revealed. How different is it? Most Indians also uphold religion and greatly respect religious leaders. Sometimes they also do not accept it if religious leaders there are accused of committing mistakes or crimes, so that this was used by Father Thomas Kaur to pay a number of people to cover up his case. Moreover, apart from being highly respected as a religious leader, he is also known as a professor and lecturer in psychology where Sister Abhaya studied. During the trial, Father Thomas refused to admit his actions and claimed to be innocent. However, Sister Shepi finally admitted that they had killed Sister Abhaya. Sister Shepi was actually a senior sister who was responsible for guarding the sisters' dormitory. However, she admitted that the night before the murder, Father Thomas secretly stayed in her room on the ground floor of the sisters' dormitory. And in the morning they both went to the kitchen and made out. There they even had sex in the kitchen. That's when Sister Abhaya heard them and caught them when they were about to get a drink. Because he was afraid of being caught, Father Thomas pounced on the sister and strangled her, then Sister Shepi took an axe that was stored in the kitchen to hit Sister Abhaya's head until she was unconscious. They then dragged her body and threw it into the well behind the kitchen. They did not know that their evil actions were seen by someone who initially intended to steal. Father Jose, who was released, had heard the commotion, but Father Jose did not know about the incident and was not involved. Although Father Thomas, who was 69 years old, continued to fight and declared his innocence until the end of the trial. But on December 22, 2020, the judge still sentenced him to life imprisonment. The judge also sentenced the sister, who was 55 years old at that time. This case really tarnished the good name of the 10th St. Pius Monastery in Kottayam. Even so, the monastery could not conduct virginity tests on the sisters, because it could violate the right to privacy, but they were still grateful that Sister Abhaya's killer had been caught. Unfortunately, both of Sister Abhaya's parents have died since 2015 without seeing any justice for their daughter, while Adhika Raju, the big thief in the city, is now respected by the residents there, for his actions as a hero who revealed the case, even though for more than 10 years he was intimidated, tortured and imprisoned. but he did not waver and was not tempted by the offer of large sums of money that could change his family's economy. He also went viral in India in 2019, and was known as a hero. Thank you for watching this video until the end. Don't forget to look forward to other interesting stories from this case, and we'll see you again another time. See you.